And that was Anna Holligan, who is following this case at The Hague as we speak. Well, let's cross to New York now and speak to Michael Bociurkiw, who is the Global Affairs Analyst at the Atlantic Council. Lovely to have you with us here on BBC News, Michael. So as we were just hearing from our correspondent there are questions over just how sharp the teeth are of the ICJ. I mean, what is the point of this?
Sure. Yes, well, both the ICJ and the ICC are important venues, of course, for arguing cases. But at the end of the day, they both suffer from the same weaknesses. They can't enforce their decisions. However, they could set the stage, if you will, for Ukraine to pursue claims of reparations. And of course, the losses are absolutely huge all over Ukraine. If I can say this as well, because I really think it's important for people to understand this, there are at least 7 justifications for the invasion that Russia has laid forward. All of them are flimsy. All of them are ridiculous. For example, one is they're claiming Nazis are running around freely in Ukraine and that President Zelensky is a Nazi. It's a ridiculous claim, especially given that he's of Jewish heritage. The other one is that they were forced to act because NATO is encircling Russia. Well, excuse me, NATO is a defensive force. I think what Mr. Putin really feared was that NATO would stand in the way of his plans to invade Ukraine and go further into Europe.
Yeah, just on the point of the fact that Ukraine are saying that Moscow is falsely using genocide law. What is genocide law?
Well, genocide law, you have to prove a systemic pattern, whether it's rape or crimes against humanity, destroying culture. Let me be very vivid with you if I can. I'm based in Odessa. I've traveled throughout Ukraine. I've been there since the start of the war. We see this on a daily basis. Ukraine at the moment is the biggest open crime scene in the world. A lot of what's happening, whether it's the rapes, whether it's the systematic destruction of the culture, the language, is being documented in real time on electronic devices, from smartphones to CCTV cameras, etc. So this is what makes this particular case different at this point of time, is that Ukraine and its supporters, 32 countries or so, should have a pretty solid case to prove what's going on.
How does Russia regard the West and the court in this matter?
With disdain. I'm surprised they will even show up. Look, I covered with your correspondent the MH17 trial in The Hague. The Russians refused to provide a lot of evidence when they were requested to. They're not handing over those that were charged. And similarly with the ICC decision, they're being very careful with Mr. Putin at the moment in terms of where he travels to avoid his arrest. But it has to be said that what these decisions do is they further isolate Russia on the world stage, further isolate Mr. Putin. His movements have to be very, very carefully orchestrated now. And that's another reason, by the way, why he's not in New York this week, because of the charges facing him.
Well, actually, let's talk about events set to take place in the United States this week. Mr. Zelensky will be travelling there, and certainly aid is being discussed with Congress. He'll then be travelling to meet President Biden. What's he hoping to come away with?
Sure. I think there are a couple of issues here. Number one is asking for more resources, and the United States is the government here is on the cusp of approving billions of dollars more in aid for Ukraine. It's a huge amount so far. And I think part of the timing is also explained by there seems to be a perception that, number one, the West is taking its time delivering aid. But number two is that we're hearing some pretty intelligent individuals argue that Russia should be given what it's asking for, especially to rehabilitate that Black Sea grain agreement, relief and sanctions, that sort of thing. This is unacceptable to Ukraine, and I believe that's one of the things he'll be pressing forward, that particular argument that they cannot have any sanctions relief, any other concessions, because this will only involve Mr. Putin as well as other dictators.
Michael Bociurkiw of the Atlantic Council, thank you very much indeed for that analysis. Thank you.